Microphone on. Right, hello everyone, good evening everyone. 7:30, we'll get started. We've got no visitors here, everyone is aware of the evacuation procedure, and just a reminder that the meeting is being audio recorded. Right, I've got apologies for absence. I've got Councillor Steptoe, who's been substituted by Councillor Cutmore, Councillor Wilson, who's been substituted by Councillor Mr Hoy, Councillor Milne, who's been substituted by Councillor Sperring. Anyone else? Okay, thank you. Okay, lovely. That takes us very quickly through to item 4 already. Minutes of the meeting held on the 16th of March 2017. Are you happy for me to sign those as a correct and accurate record? Okay. Just do that for first bit of administration. But this is the first member meeting since the events in Manchester, and I wonder if it is appropriate if we just take a minute to reflect and remember those that lost their lives and those that were affected on Monday. So if you wouldn't mind, take a minute please. Thank you. Thank you. Obviously, we've got just the one item on the agenda tonight. With regard to item 5, declarations of interest, we've just got one statement or bit of advice, please.
Yes, that's right. The application this evening relates to land where Rochford District Council is actually the landowner, as a result of which all members here tonight have a non-pecuniary interest. And therefore, under the Constitution, I would be inviting you to declare a non-pecuniary interest. However, that, of course, doesn't prevent you from participating this evening.
Do any members take issue with that? If the minutes could reflect everybody's non-pecuniary interest, please. Are there any other pecuniary interests? Okay, thank you. So, item 6, which is 65 Broxford Avenue, Rayleigh, constructing a new surface to form a driveway to 65. Mr. Stranks is going to take us through this one.
Thank you, Chairman. This application, you'll see, members, from the report, is for a vehicular access serving the property at the farthest end of Broxford Avenue, shown here if I follow the cursor, edged in red, as members will be familiar with. It's part of a wider green area that links between Broxford and Cotford Avenue at the top. Here we have the Rayleigh Lodge Public House. These dwellings here, about 1950s in age and comprising mostly bungalows, most of which have got drive-ins along the side, but the one at the very end here is landlocked. The turning head, as you'll see at this edge of the turning head of the street, at current time gives a footpath, but it doesn't give a vehicular access to this site. Now, the owners, I understand, have approached the council, as the council owns the land, and that's why it's brought before you tonight, to see if access was possible. And I understand a licence has been granted, but obviously being outside of the site, it does need planning permission as well. So if we can just see the details of the application, this is what the applicant has put together to help us. You'll see the existing end of the turning head here. Currently it's bollarded off to the green area, but they've drawn this red line figuratively through here to give you an idea of the width. It's about 3.3 metres in width and 15 metres in depth. And as I said, it creates an access that you can see on the lower image there of the yellow. Now, the construction of it, you'll see from the report, is that it would remove the soil to a depth of, slightly different to what's in the report, but it says about, we've calculated about 300 millimetres, about a foot or so. If hopefully this image will help us with that. And it's then overlaid with a concrete crush mix to about 6 inches, 200 mil or so. Then above that, some soil and sand. And on the top would be an ACO system. And for members' benefit, it's like a plastic grill, yeah, that members have probably seen in public car parks, which the pockets are planted with soil and grass seed. So the idea is it becomes a hard enough surface that's durable for the access, but the grass, in theory, grows through it better, rather than being a harsh surface material. So this interlocks on the surface for the duration. There we see it in section. You see there's the undisturbed soil, the base that would be put in, then a layer of soil, and the system would sit on the top with the grass growing out of it. It's not grasscrete, but it's like an alternative. Some members are familiar with grasscrete as an option. That's concrete blocks with holes. This is a plastic pavia system, which you'll see the soil and the grass root and grow through it. It's also very porous. It allows the surface to take the water to feed the grass with it. Now, you'll see that given that it has that soft, porous surface that's grassed, it has a better visual appearance to the street and the area locally. It's a more suitable, more friendly, if you like, softer surface. So officers don't feel that there's any visual amenity consequence. If I can get back to the plan, members will probably recall that there are some preserved trees in the grounds of the Rayleigh Lodge, but the nearest of them are about 20 metres or so away from the proposed access. So we don't feel that these works will interfere with the rooting systems of those preserved trees in any way. Now, given that there wouldn't be that harm to any of the vegetation that's preserved, the softness of the surface, members will see that the Highway Authority has no objection, subject to a couple of conditions which I believe are reflected in the report. The recommendation is therefore approval, subject to those conditions you'll see at paragraph 7.1.
Councillor Stanley, as a visitor, I'll give you the opportunity to speak.
Thank you very much. We looked at this at RTC. We was worried about the boundary line, whether there would be obstacles on the boundary.
Can you just use your microphone, please, so as it's recorded properly?
Sorry. We was worried about as the posts are being taken away, that's already there, would if there is no obstacles to stop other vehicles parking on the green.
Can I just stop you there? I just need to make it clear. You're saying at Rayleigh Town Council, you said
No,
we've got the formal representation from the Town Council. Yeah. Just need to appreciate that it's you saying
it's
this.
It's me, yeah. Which I obviously brought this up as well. But what we was looking at, or what I was looking at the time when we looked at it, was that there are obstacles there at the moment, the bollards, if you like, whether they be wood or whatever. Would it not, if they're going to come away, then it would allow parking to the right-hand side where the tree is or whatever that is there, be used so they could run off and run onto that should any visitors come into that close. And was wondering if if obstacles like those bollards could be put along that line, that red line, to stop that. That's all I've got to say. Thank you.
Are there any other members wishing to speak? Councillor Newport.
Just one question about whether there would be any parking restrictions in that turning head, because it may be used for visitor parking at the moment.
There's no parking restriction at the moment, and there's
No.
no indication of anything in the report. So that's Councillor Mr Hoy.
Thank you. Technical council standings point. Thank you. The bollards are, I assume, a relatively new addition because they're certainly not on Google Maps when you look at the street view. I'm guessing that's because there was a problem with people going onto the grass previously. Is it possible to add the condition that Councillor Stanley mentioned?
Mr Stranks.
Thank you.
Chairman, if I may, I take members' point, and it would be something that, perhaps as planners we would normally consider. To that end, in the run-up to this meeting, I found out that as part of the licence that's already been granted, the council's position was very clear to the applicant that no boundary demarcation was to be provided. I'm not sure as to the reasoning, but the applicant for this is already of the view that we as a council, in another place albeit, have said they don't want any boundary demarcation. I think the applicant themselves was interested in providing a sort of a ranch-style fence up the side. And I think bollards has been suggested, and it's my understanding, I may be incorrect from members who are part of that process, but the ambition of the council was to keep it a sort of a wider space as possible, just with this surface over it. The suggestion of the bollards rightfully preventing access, because access is still possible, I think, unbollarded off Copford Avenue the other end. But there was an ambition, I believe, not to provide the bollards as part of this scheme.
Councillor Black.
Of course, as you know, Chairman, what somebody else in the council believes isn't relevant at all to what this committee decides. I can understand that the council wouldn't want to see a ranch-style fence. That would be too intrusive. But I would certainly support bollards, wooden ones.
From my side of things, as that stands at the moment, as we see in the picture, you have the open view of the green space of Copford Avenue. I think if you demarcate it with bollards, I think that might take something away from the amenity. If it were a blacktop surface, I think the argument for demarcation would be strong. But as the appearance of the surface, as illustrated through the reinforcement system has been explained, it will the view that you see will essentially remain as the view as you see it there, and as such, I think I would be inclined to leave the status quo, because it is something that can be dealt with at a later stage. Because if vehicles start to go onto our land, it's something that it is within our gift, albeit in another place, to do something about. Councillor Cutmore.
Thank you, Chairman. I think really what we're talking about here is de minimis, really.
Yeah.
It's a very small application. Other than the bollards, which I think are releasing, because I looked on Google, and as I say, they weren't there when I looked on Google. I've actually got it here somewhere. Clearly that's been put there to stop, because I know that when we had a site visit at this place, must be 3 years ago, that there were vehicles parked on it, as I remember. So that might well be why. But of course that was access to the road, to the house at the end. Why on earth it was built that way, I've really no idea. How that got through the relevant planning situation at the time. But just to say, I think I sort of accede to your view, Chairman, in that what I don't want to do is spoil the amenity of the green that's there already, and I think the applicant has done their very best to make sure that it actually looks almost as it looks now, but without the bollards.
Okay.
From that point of view, I think it's very good.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chairman.
And then Councillor Wright. Yeah. Okay. Does anyone like to second that one? Councillor Hoy. Right. Yeah, please.
I actually disagree totally in your interpretation. You're saying with the grass, with the surface that looks like grass, we don't need demarcation. I think we need it more, because somebody's going to say, well, they're parking there all the time, not realising that it is a grasscrete surface, perhaps. and it will only encourage other people to move onto the grass. So I don't want anything too intrusive, but I think those three wooden bollards there at the moment don't affect the openness in any way. And I think something on that scale to demarcate along that side will be very good.
Okay, Councillor Sperry.
Thank you, Chairman. I think we're caught between the rock and the hard place here, because 3 bollards on that length, cars would just drive between them. It's as simple as that. As you've said, I mean, it is our land. If we find that it is becoming an issue, that people are parking on it, and they haven't, as far as I'm aware at the moment, been parking on it, then retrospectively we could put the bollards in on our land. But I would think putting 3 over the length of, what was it, 15 metres, something like that, cars would just drive between the bollards. You either need something that they can't drive between, or you will need more than 3. And I think it may be one of these situations that we have to let it stand as it is at the moment, take the bollard, certainly the 2 left-hand bollards out. If we find it becomes an issue, then we address it when it becomes an issue. But otherwise, you're going to end up, I would suggest, with probably 10 bollards, just to avoid traffic driving between them.
Councillor Hoy, you wanted to come back?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I think if you do look on the maps, I think that's do we have Google Maps or not?
No, unfortunately, it's
tonight
not
because
available
it's
tonight.
down again. If you look to the left, the picture is missing out some bushes or trees, virtually just cut off by that picture. And I think three of those posts would be adequate to stop access from there.
And
I really do. Thank you.
Councillor Cutmore.
Thank you, Chairman. Just to say, I think it may not be clear from what we're looking at, because that's a photo that's there at the moment, but you can see that there is vegetation there that stops people going at least half the way. A good compromise might just be a bit of more planting the other side of that vegetation, just to stop people driving on it. What's wrong with that? You know, just some bushes that people won't drive
I think
through.
we within the planning, we just need to look at, consider Councillor Black's amendment on the principle of the
For the
bollard
moment, we're talking to
rather
that.
than the
Yeah.
garden. Councillor Black, I think just before you sum up, I think it's a relatively simple item. So if you just want to finish off and then we'll vote on your amendment.
I'm not seeing a barrier of bollards sticking up to stop vehicles going on there. I'm looking for a few bollards, basically, just to act as demarcation. The word is demarcation, just to indicate the separation of the grass from that surface. And whilst I know we can talk about more planting and doing it later, you know, that will be an extra duty for the council to do. So, as Councillor Cutmore says, it's not a big thing. It is de minimis almost, but I just think 3 bollards would improve it, that's all.
Okay. Members, on Councillor Black's amendment for the provision of demarcation along that line, those members in favour of adding the amendment for demarcation, please indicate. Those against. Your amendment is lost. Right, members, we'll go to the main recommendation, which I think we've fully explored now, on 6.4, that planning permission be approved with the conditions as indicated in the report. Those members in favour of the recommendation, please indicate. Those against. That item is carried. And that takes us through to the end of the meeting. Thank you very much.